In this video, we're going to be looking at solving a few problems off of the Solving Systems by Elimination Exercise B worksheet, just to serve as a refresher for solving systems using the elimination method. Now, my goals for you today are to finish any missing work that you do have, and then once you're done with any missing work, you will go ahead and finish or work on this Elimination Exercise B worksheet. So with that being said, let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and do number 1 with you. So number 1, we have 2x plus 3y equals 28, and we have x minus 3y equals negative 22. So very important that when you are solving a system using the elimination method, you always need to make sure that your equations are in standard form. So remember, that's x, y equals your number, x, y equals your number. So that's great. Now, the biggest thing with the elimination method is that we want to make sure that we create opposite coefficients. So remember, an opposite coefficient, for instance, for example, I can have something like 6x. The opposite coefficient would be negative 6x, because remember, our goal in elimination is to be able to add them together and they would eliminate each other. So whenever I look at my x's, I have 2x and 1x. Those are not opposite coefficients of each other. But when I look at my y's, I have a positive 3y and a negative 3y. These are opposite coefficients of each other. So what that means is I can go ahead and add these two equations together. So 2x plus 1x gives me 3x. 3y plus negative 3y, this cancels out, and this equals 28 plus negative 22. And I end up with 6. My next step is to divide both sides by 3. And when I take 6 divided by 3, I end up with 2. So here I end up with x equals 2. Now that I know that x equals 2, I want to go ahead and find the value of y. I want to know what y is equal to. So I need to come up over to my original two equations, and I need to decide which equation is going to be the easiest for me to find my y value. Personally, for me, I would go ahead and choose the top equation, just because all of my x's and y's are positive. So here, I'm going to take the equation 2x plus 3y equals 28, and I now know that anytime I see the variable x, it is equivalent to 2. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in 2 for x. So I have 2 times 2 plus 3y equals 28. Now, I know what the value of x is. I'm looking for the value of y. So I'm solving for y here. 2 times 2 is 4. Drop down plus 3y equals 28. Again, solving for y, I need to now remove the constant by subtracting 4. 28 minus 4 gives me 24. Divide both sides by the coefficient of 3, and I end up with y equals 8. So, now that I know what my x and y values are, I want to write my answer as a solution. And remember, our solution is an ordered pair. Every ordered pair has an x and y value. In this case, my solution would be 2, 8. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to go ahead and take a look at number 5. So number 5, we have negative 3x minus 4y equals 20, and we have negative x minus 4y equals 4. So to start off with, I have to check to see if both of my equations are in standard form. So in other words, do I have x, y equals my number? Yes. Second equation, x, y equals my number? Great. So now I need to check to see if I have opposite coefficients. So when I look at my x's, I have negative 3x and negative 1x. These are not opposite coefficients of each other. So now I check my y's. With my y value, I have a negative 4y and a negative 4y. These are not opposite coefficients of each other. They actually happen to be the same coefficient. So if I want to, what I can now do is I can make these opposite coefficients of each other. And the way we're going to do that is, if you want to think about it, the opposite of negative 4y is a positive 4y. So in order to make negative 4y into a positive 4y, the number that we would have to multiply by is negative 1. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to multiply the bottom equation by negative 1. I'm going to go ahead and start off by just rewriting the top equation. And like I mentioned, we're going to multiply everything in the bottom equation by -1. So -1 times -x is a positive x. -1 times a -4y is a positive 4y. Now this equals -1 times 4, which is -4. Now you can see that we have gone ahead and created these opposite coefficients. So now we can go ahead and add these two terms together. So -3x plus 1x gives us -2x. -4y plus 4y cancels out. And 20 plus -4 ends up giving us 16. Our next step is to divide both sides by -2. -2 cancels out, and I am left with x equals 16 divided by -2 ends up giving us a -8. So here x equals -8. Now that I know my x value, I now want to go ahead and find my y value. So remember, I now need to look at my two original equations to decide which equation I would like to use to find my y value. Personally, I think I'm going to go ahead and use the top equation. So here I have -3x minus 4y equals 20. I know, remember, that anytime I see an x value, it is equivalent to -8. So here I have -3 times -8 minus 4y equals 20. Our next step is to solve for y. -3 times -8 is a positive 24 minus 4y equals 20. Next step, I'm going to remove the constant by subtracting 24 to both sides. I end up with, I'm going to go ahead and write this over here, -4y equals 20 plus, or I'm sorry, 20 minus 24, which is -4. Divide both sides by -4. -4 divided by -4 is a positive 1. So now we want to go ahead and write this out as an ordered pair. As an ordered pair, my solution is -8, 1. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and take a look at number 7. So, looking at number 7, I noticed that both of my equations are in standard form. We have xy equals my number, and then xy equals my number. So now I have to check to see if I have opposite coefficients. 14x and 7x are not opposite coefficients of each other. And 3y and -4y are also not opposite coefficients of each other. So now I have to create an opposite coefficient. And when you have to create an opposite coefficient, your first question to yourself should be to look at your coefficients and check to see if they go into one another. So in other words, does 7x go into 14x? Yes, it goes in twice. 3 does not go into 4 evenly. So here I need to make opposite coefficients out of my x variables. So here I want to make the opposite coefficient of the larger number. So in that case, that would be 14x. The opposite coefficient of 14x would be -14x. So now I have to ask myself, what do I multiply 7x by to make -14? Well, that is going to be -2. So very first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is rewrite my top equation. And I'm going to multiply everything in the bottom equation by -2. So -2 times 7x is -14x. -2 times -4y is a positive 8y. And this equals -2 times -26, which is going to give us a positive 52. So now that we have created opposite coefficients, we can go ahead and add our equations together. So 14x plus -14x cancels out. 3y plus 8y is 11y. And this equals -19 plus 52. And I end up with 33. Our next step is to divide both sides by 11, and I end up with y equals 3. Now that I know that y equals 3, I want to go ahead and find the value of x. So when I look at my original two equations, the equation that I'm going to go ahead and end up using to find my x value, I'm going to go ahead and use the bottom equation. So I'm going to go ahead and use 7x minus 4y equals -26. Now remember, we know that anytime we see a y value, we know it's equivalent to 3. So here I end up getting 7x minus 4 times 3 equals negative 26. Well, negative 4 times 3 ends up giving us negative 12 equals negative 26. I'm going to remove the constant by adding 12 to both sides, and I end up with 7x equals negative 26 plus 12, which ends up giving us negative 14. Divide both sides by 7, and I end up getting x equals negative 2. So from here, as an ordered pair, my solution is negative 2, 3. So, like I mentioned before, go ahead and make up any of your missing work, and then go ahead and work on exercise B of elimination. And I will go ahead and see y'all tomorrow.